This week, it's our quarterly Security Money segment. But first, we welcome Will Lin, partner and co-founder at ForgePoint Capital, to discuss how to think like an investor. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. How do you use the information from this show to address issues that executives actually care about? TrustedSec is a global information security consulting firm built on cutting-edge attack simulation research that extends those insights to advisory services, including governance, risk, and compliance, PCI, virtual CISO, and MITRE attack framework assessments. TrustedSec helps you translate the types of zeros and ones that you care about to the types of zeros and ones that executives care about. Go to trustedsec.com/Security Weekly. Learn how TrustedSec can become an extension of your team. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 124, recorded April 15th, 2019. That means it's tax day, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado, joined by my co-host, Jason Albuquerque, who's sitting in for Paul Asadorian in G-Unit Studio.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, thanks for stepping in. Paul's got this really weird schedule with his kids, like vacations and spring breaks, and between February and April, it's always a little crazy.
Yeah, that parent thing, you know.
Yeah, I know. It gets in the way. ServiceNow makes work better. Getting simple stuff completed at work can be easy, and getting complex multi-step tasks accomplished can be painless. Automate, digitize, and optimize processes across security, risk, and IT to resolve risk quickly based on business impact. To learn more about ServiceNow, visit securityweekly.com/ServiceNow. Join your CISO peers at the Global Cyber Innovation Summit, May 1st and 2nd at the Sagamore Pendery in Baltimore, Maryland. This is an invitation-only event. Please visit globalcybersummit.org/request-information to request your invitation. Also, you can submit your suggestions for guests in our recently released guest suggestion form. Go to securityweekly.com/guests and enter your suggestions. We get a lot of suggestions via email, and the form just helps us kind of streamline the process of getting guests onto the show. So thanks for using that form. All right, let's start with our interview for the day. Will Lin is a partner and co-founder at ForgePoint Capital. He has been an avid technology enthusiast for decades and has worked with more than 15 cybersecurity companies to date. Will is involved with 4IQ, AppThority, Ativo Networks, Bachelor Networks, Bishop Fox, ID Experts, IronNet Cybersecurity, Login Radius, Reversing Labs, and Upticks. He is a board member observer at 4IQ, Ativo Networks, Bachelor Networks, Bishop Fox, Login Radius, and Upticks. Will, welcome back to Business Security Weekly.
Hello. Hey, thanks for naming all my companies for me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, just a ton of them. Yeah, that's like the entire ForgePoint Capital portfolio, isn't it?
It's awesome. Thank you, Matt.
You've been on the show before. We did when Michael was running the show, we did a session with you. Today, we're going to talk about how to think like an investor. But before, I want to congratulate you on being promoted to partner.
Thank you, Matt. I'm over here now. Perfect. Yeah, it's very rewarding to be part of a firm to help grow it for the past 4 years, and then now to be a partner. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you've been what was it? It was Trident Cyber before, and then kind of morphed into ForgePoint Capital, kind of renamed last year at RSA a year ago, and you've been heavily involved in a lot of the different companies we just rattled off. So it's good to see you continue to move up. This means you get to do your own deals now, right?
Yes. Well, now more of my own deals without. The way that we invest, we always have 2 partners per investment, and so I have been doing deals over the last year or so, but then now it's more of a defined solely.
That's awesome. Great. All right, so let's talk about investing a little bit. You and I have had lots of conversations. I advise a number of startups. A few of those startups I've kind of tossed your way over the years. We haven't done a deal together yet, but
not yet.
Not yet. You notice I said not yet.
The word yet. Key word yet.
Exactly. But let's talk about criteria. We're going to talk more on the private investing side. We can talk public investing maybe a little bit later in the segment. But when you, as an investor, a venture capitalist, think about making an investment in a startup, let's kind of educate us on what are some of those things you look at for that investment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think every investor has slight differences as well, which is the beauty of this. There's a lot of ways you can help the business and make and deploy capital. For ForgePoint specifically, we focus a lot on the thematic component of each company. The reality is people who've been in security for a long period of time have seen that the ups and downs, the sine wave within security. And with each theme, there's sort of like a perfect time to invest in this early stage investment. For us, our main filter is we like investing in the Series A and Series B, meaning where you're either your first or second institutional board member. And because of that focus on the early stages, we want to invest at the right timing per theme. That's one of the worst things you can do as an investor is invest in a company before it's time. So, for instance, you start a company when a company is about to go IPO. You're gonna always, everyone's gonna be asking you about that public company when you're trying to win that business, and so that time component is really critical.
So, thematics. What are some of those themes you're looking at? My audience knows there's 3 things I love to look at when I look at my advisory clients. For example, app user data are 3 big themes for me. What are some of your themes right now in the cybersecurity market?
Yeah, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about vulnerabilities. When you talk about back to the basics, I think vulnerability is one of those things that you want visibility into, you want control over, you want to integrate processes with certain controls and tools to make sure you have good insight into where those vulnerabilities are. And so we're looking at that across the application side, the network side. And so that's one big theme for us. We recently made an investment in a pen testing company along that theme. And we also have roots from Trident investing, being the lead investor in Qualys. So that's really important to us. I think the second most important theme that we're spending a lot of time, and this is my team versus myself, is we're spending a lot of time thinking about what happens pre and post breach or pre and post boom. So we even made investments in the post boom part. And gradually, we've been moving earlier and earlier to recently making investment in a cyber insurance company, which we view as something that you do pre-boom that has a ton of impact in terms of what happens post-boom. So that's another key theme. Overall, I would say that our key sort of mental framework is a lot around back to the basics. Instead of the shiny tools that people are buying and playing with today, we're looking for ways for people to go back to the basics, whether it's a process or a solution. It doesn't necessarily have to be a startup in that ecosystem.
Now, on the network vulnerability side, right, we've got some really mature solutions with Qualys, Tenable, and Rapid7 all public, right? Mm-hmm. You talked about pen testing a bit, which is interesting to think about, the pen testers and, kind of not only just the vulnerability, but then going all the way through to I can compromise a system, which may start with a vulnerability, but goes deeper than that. Where I see the really interesting vulnerability market space right now is more on the application container side, because we're embedding a lot of existing libraries and binaries into our new apps. We don't know how secure some of those dependencies are. So I've always seen a really interesting piece on the application vulnerability side. Is that where you see more of the momentum right now?
On the vulnerability side, I see two things happening. So the first one, exactly what you said. I think application security is so critical. All businesses will become digital businesses over time. And so because of that transition, people are applying their vulnerability management techniques that they've seen on the network side into the application side. And that's where there's a lot of opportunity for the network vulnerability management companies to go into, or the scanners to move into. And then, of course, we have sort of existing application security companies that do the scanning as well as the testing, as well as we can even include the firewalls in there as well, right? Because the firewalls are there trying to prevent vulnerabilities from being exploited. And so a lot of that is gradually shifting towards application. So I completely agree with you. If I were to say pen testing, I feel like pen testing is more and more being defined as application pen testing, while the traditional network pen testing work is now being called red teaming, right? And so when I think of pen testing, I think of 80% of the time, I think of application pen testing versus network.
Got it. Okay, so some interesting trends, right? I mean, I definitely agree with you on that front. When you look at an investment, what are you looking for in the company? What's some of those criteria that you look at to make a decision on whether you're going to invest or not?
Yeah, I think with the thematic theme, the nice thing there is that we have a pretty strong opinion on what the great company in this space should look like. And so a lot of our time is spent meeting companies and seeing how either they're shaping our opinion or they're matching the opinion that we wanted to see in that space. So that opinion comes down to how's the product architected, what are the type of customers that they're selling to, what's the average selling price, what's the sales cycle. And so those are all things that you find out as you get to know the company. The other really big thing that you find out as you get to know the company is the team as well. Understanding how the team thinks, where is their roots, where's the history, and if we were to have sort of a debate, how would each of us sort of manage that debate as well? Because, as I said, I think in probably the last year's podcast, investing is much like a marriage, right? And so, how do you get through these situations together in a marriage or in a startup together? So, product, market, theme is one component, and the second component is on the team.
Yeah, I think it's great that you actually take culture into consideration, right? The team and how they operate. Because from a CISO's perspective, I go out there and I look at the market and it's so swamped, right? I mean, there's so many products, so many services out there. Sometimes we're just racking our brains to try to figure out what that right leader is out in the market. So, I look at, an investment firm like yourself. How do you differentiate those leaders and those visionaries out to know that you want to invest in them? Again, it's so swamped out there. There's so many companies right now jumping on security tools and services and applications. How do you find those, the differentiator to invest in?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you asking it as well. Because the way that one way you can think about investors, we spend a lot of time thinking about things from other people's perspectives, right? From the customer's perspective, from the acquirer's perspective, from the partner's perspective. This is with regards to the exit or the revenue. But then we also spend a lot of time thinking about things with regards to each role within the company as well. How would do those people feel empowered to do what they're doing? Is the culture supporting additional growth in terms of learning, as well as ability to hire additional great people? So that comes over time. All right. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to get that done effectively other than brute forcing it, in terms of meeting a lot of people. And the other one, of course, is references, introductions. Those are incredibly important. And as each person sort of builds their network of people that they trust, one person will send an intro and okay, that person really cares a lot about how the team. And so I know that when they make that introduction, they've spent a lot of time thinking about the team. And so I can sort of get through that a little bit quicker. I know this other person thinks a lot about how the product is architected. If the product isn't architected well, they don't care how many customers they have or how good the team is. And so I'm able to leverage that context as well. So building empathy for a lot of different people, as well as people who introduce opportunities to you.
No, that's great.
How do you balance the financial aspects and the market opportunity of the company with the team? I would imagine, look, if you've been in the space for a while and you've had some successful startups, the team component rates really, really high. How does that balance against market opportunity, customer revenue, eventually profitability? I think that's probably later down the road. How do you leverage across those two dynamics?
Yeah. I mean, on the on the market and product side, I think that's the beauty of being thematic, because we have certain opinions of the theme already. We have context from historical companies that have similarities to the same theme as well. And so with that context we have, I think we don't spend too much time looking at companies in markets that we don't believe in. And that saves us time as well, because then we don't have to, reject a company that we were going to reject from the very beginning. So that's one. So the market side, I think we feel very comfortable in, and that's, I think, one benefit to being a security focused fund, is that we will typically have an opinion of a space before we even meet the company. On the team side, I mean, that's, once we believe in the market, we believe in the customers want it, and they consider a top 10 priority, for instance, for the year. They have budget. They know how much it's going to cost. Then that's when we really focus on the team, right? Because team can make or break a company. We've seen many examples where you have 3-5 companies. They all do the exact same thing, and they're able to win from a lot of different factors. Some of them win because there's, frankly, just really great people, and all their competitors it's personal. I've seen that happen, and it's crazy to say that's the case, because at the end of the day, it should be the best product that always wins, but that's not always. When you're at the early stages, the product is going to mature and grow so much in the time that you're a customer that at the end of the day, customers are looking at the team as well, and they want to work with teams that they like. And of course, you can do really good in terms of marketing. You can do really good in terms of architecture. So there's a lot of different ways you can differentiate yourself in the early stages to compete against your competitors. But at the end of the day, customers are always right. The CISO is always right. They know what they want, and they're thoughtful. They don't know. Very few CISOs will work with a company just because I introduced them to that company. Yeah. They want to make sure it solves a problem that they genuinely have.
Yeah, and the other side is, I think you mentioned it, the relationship, right? I want to make sure that I have a business partner that I can have a relationship with, and through the good, the bad, the ugly, we work through it together, and we get to the outcome that I need for my organization. So knowing that one of the criteria you look at is the culture side and more of the softer side of the business, I think that's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
So let's talk financials a little bit. Just, I mean, some of the things that you've got companies that are starting out early, looking for initial investment, I would say under a seed round. You guys aren't going to go there because you're a Series A or B investor. You're going to look for a certain amount of traction with those investments. Are there certain criteria on the financial side you start to look at to say, look, I need to see at least these many customers or this much revenue? Are there metrics there that you use to make a decision on the investment then?
Yeah, I think the first question comes down to what does their target customer for now look like? If their target customer for now is SMB, then we're looking for metrics, right? We're looking for a certain amount of revenue. We're trying to see how have they been capturing those customers on the SMB side. If it's a middle market, it's a little bit different, but we're still looking for revenue in that case in time, because with middle market, the sales model is typically very inside sales, direct demand generation type sales. And so we want to understand what that looks like, and can they continue to sort of build that, granted with a better product, granted with more resources on the team, more funding, et cetera. When they move to the enterprise side, then it's a little bit different, right? I think it really comes down to how impactful is the product. Not every single company has to completely reshape the customer's infrastructure. In fact, I think most customers would prefer as little change as possible, and gradually over time, you grow into more and more change as they trust the vendor more. And so the customers that target a very specific problem, we want to understand what type of customers, how much are they paying, like how important is that problem to them? Is it a defined budget or not? And after a certain amount of understanding what their pilot customers look like, as well as paid customers look like, we can have a very good sense of, okay, this is a Series A, quote unquote, Series A team, Series A product, blah, blah, blah. But it's really hard to say. But I would say in general, the generic number is around $1 million of recurring revenue or GAAP revenue. But that's not a hard and fast rule.
Got it. And so solutions that integrate maybe with existing solutions that there's budget for might be a little better fit than somebody's who's trying to do a rip and replace with or without budget, because again, in the enterprise, you're trying to fit it into the existing ecosystem. Is that kind of how I just heard that a little bit?
Yeah. So for instance, if you want to be a rip and replace company, that's going to be a really high bar in terms of being able to prove it to a customer that you can actually solve that problem, because they should or most likely have something already. It might not be perfect, but they have something, right? And so if you're able to convince that customer, say, hey, I'm gonna do a rip and replace. The reality is, once I do this rip and replace, me as a customer will be giving you $3 million plus in terms of a contract. Then we're not looking for that $3 million contract, right? Because it's going to take time for it to get there. But if we can see visibility to it, right? Like they are a pilot customer today. It's completely deployed. They're getting a ton of value out of it. They're asking for, give me this, and this in terms of additional features that I need to really replace what I already have today. Then yeah, it doesn't even need to be $1 million number. But how many companies that can actually do that? Very, very, very few. And so it's always a situational with each company as we understand the customer. But at the end of the day, it's all about the customer. What does the customer look like? And how can we as investors enable a company to get more customers that look like that as well? Or maybe open a new market or different category of customers for them.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, especially from my perspective, it's one of those scenarios where if I'm going to engage with a company to replace either infrastructure or tools or applications within my environment, I want that implementation roadmap, because the likelihood of me getting that entire budget year one isn't going to happen. That's just reality. I'm not going to get the entire budget year one, but if I can show an implementation roadmap to my leadership to say, here's how I'm going to bring this new product in over time to get us to this better place and get the outcome that I want, I'm more likely to get that investment. I can't just forklift everything into my environment.
Exactly. And so, maybe one example of that in our portfolio is Upsix, right? They are a next-gen endpoints and agent. And their universal agent that they're leveraging OS Query on can fulfill 5, 6, 7 different use cases that each of those use cases have their own agent for. And so it does give you a real sense of that rip and replace ability, because they're solving so many different problems and at lower overhead in terms of IT as well.
But they're not necessarily trying to solve all of those use cases day one, right? Try to get some traction and then over time build out those additional use cases and grow that revenue stream.
Exactly right. And so out of those 7 different things they can do, what's the most important thing that they can do today? And then how can they grow that over time to over time achieving those 7 different use cases? But I think the reality is, with even a small solution, even with something like that, even solving one problem typically ends up being closer and closer to 7 figures. And so imagine what the company could do in terms of value add to the customers as they start going on those additional use cases.
Yeah, I want to pull on that string a little bit, because I've been in this conversation with at least one of my advisory clients, is having an initial focus of where you can go generate revenue, I think is important for you as an investor to see traction. But the ability for them to do more over time is also attractive. But if you try to go after everything day one, you potentially lose focus and don't nail that initial use case. Just your thoughts on kind of that approach, right? Focus on what you know you can solve, expand over time, which gives you a longer term growth path. Does that make sense from an investment perspective as well?
Yeah, and this is one where empathy of the customer is really important, right? If the customer can see this path and says, okay, well, I would like to go down this path with you, but for now, let's solve this first problem together. I think having that customer empathy on the entrepreneur level is really important. And some entrepreneurs, they clearly show that they don't understand the customer at all with regards to their problems, their organization, their leadership. How likely is that entrepreneur going to create a solution that will actually help that customer? So the key criteria around empathy is quite important because it helps you build trust as well with the entrepreneur, and that also helps them build trust with the investors as well.
Yeah, and Will, so where do you go to gauge the customer? Someone like myself, right, who would be buying that product in the end. How do you, because I mean, I could be a startup and I can come to you guys and say, hey, here's all the feedback I've gotten from my customers. How do you go out there and validate that out in the field?
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Great question, right? There are a certain number of private networks where CISOs come together and talk about their problems, as well as, sorry, I had something on my screen. Talk about their problems, as well as the experiences working with specific companies. And I think the best investors spend time demonstrating their understanding of how the CISOs think, and also being of service to the CISOs or to the ultimate customers as well. And so at the end of the day, we are being of service to the customers, who are being of service to our entrepreneurs. And by being able to be of service to everyone, we sort of learn along the way. And we also build trust. And so in the event that we do need help validating something, and let's say this customer does not have an active project going, they might be more willing to say, well, I trust you as an investor to bring me something that will actually help me solve a problem, even if it's not on my roadmap today.
That's awesome. How can I get on your list?
Let's talk.
Sounds good.
Right. So, I mean, the network helps you identify the problems that CISOs are facing that need solutions, which gives you your themes, your thematics.
Right. Exactly.
When you find solutions out there, it gives you an ability to introduce them back to say, what do you think about this tech, which also helps validate whether they're solving the problem in the right way to address the problems that the CISOs have. So it kind of works both ways, is you're getting data from them, but you're also introducing them to new technologies, and that creates this really great network relationship.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's, the goal is to find win-win situations. Yep. And this is a very beautiful way of doing that, right? Because as a practitioner or CISO, you don't have the time to talk to all 3,000 security companies out there. And on top of that, there's one, they can say a certain message, but you need to dig at least 2-3 levels deeper to understand if they're architected the right way, if their visions aligns well with yours. And so in some ways, it's helpful to be able to ask someone who, the investors, spend all of our time talking to startups to be able to connect those dots for them.
Yeah, I think that was really the reason why I asked that question about the market being so swamped. How do you really go in there and differentiate the companies that are the best ones out there? Because that's where I don't have the time, right? As someone out there in the field, the CISO for my organization, I ignore so many emails and phone calls and voicemails from all these products and services that are out there. I think I ignore 10, 20 times than I'll actually open up an email for. So, to be able to have a partner, and this is why I talked about a partnership, to be able to say, hey, wait a minute, we looked at these 3-4 companies, and this is the one that bubbled to the top as the best. I think that's a great, relationship you can have. And that's why I asked, hey, how can I be on that list, right? Because you're doing a job of bubbling the best of breed up to the top. I'll do a job of beating the hell out of it in the field. And then we have a win-win situation between, a company who has a practitioner and an investment firm like yourself.
Yeah, in some ways, we spend a lot of time connecting the dots, and it's sort of our value add, and it's very rewarding to be able to do that for customers as well as entrepreneurs. to help make relevant connections. Because as we know, so much of the world is inefficient, right? And so being able to create some warm, connected, valuable relationships with people is always a way to sort of combat the randomness of the world.
That's great. Jason, any more questions for Will while we have him?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Awesome. Will, thank you for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. It was great to connect with you guys.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks for the time.
We'll take a quick break and then cover the Security Money segment.